Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Within Range Coaching Podcast. I'm Ranger, a certified holistic success coach, and in this podcast, I break down the journey entrepreneurs face as they start their organizations, overcome roadblocks in their way, and create an impact that lasts. We talk with entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and purpose-driven community members just like you. Together, we learn how to grow our impact and develop ourselves as the people behind the mission. My intention is to help more people. And remember, if you're curious about expanding your impact, growing a community, or defining your mission, vision, or values, we can chat off the record. You can find my info in the show notes or at my website, withinrangecoaching.com. We're also looking to build our sponsor community with organizations and individuals who align with our values of fearless innovation, social responsibility, and courageous candor. If you're interested in helping us highlight individuals doing great work in the world and share these values, reach out to me directly at ranger@withinrangecoaching.com. I know you're just as eager to get started as I am, so let's jump right in. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Within Range Coaching Podcast. Today, we're diving deep into the world of agriculture with a very special guest, Charity Underwood Saulsberry. Charity brings her wealth of knowledge from the beef industry into our conversation, shedding light on the challenges and triumphs faced by first-generation farmers and ranchers. We chat about the realities of modern farming, the misconceptions about rural life, and the importance of education and community involvement. Whether you're a seasoned rancher or just curious about the agricultural world, this episode is packed with insights you won't want to miss. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, kick up your feet, and let's get started. All right, everybody. Well, I'd like to welcome today's guest, Charity Saulsberry. Charity, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. I'm excited for our discussion.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. Well, if you could just go ahead and give us a quick rundown of your background and what your intention is for today for our listeners who may not know who you are.
Okay. My name is Charity Ann Saulsberry. My husband and I are fourth and fifth generation ranch kids. We both have grown up on ranches in Texas and New Mexico, and we have a commercial cow-calf ranch operation in New Mexico right now. We also have a feedlot that's not operating at the moment, but that's a goal. And I've been a public beef advocate for probably, without saying how old I am, it's been about 24 years that I've been promoting the beef industry and the truth about how we do things for the public. I don't handhold, I don't sugarcoat, but I do inform the public the best I can. So that's my spiel.
So a lifelong farm kid, ranch and beef advocate. And you mentioned a little bit about the truth of what the industry is, and I'm sure we'll get to that in just a moment. Yeah. And specifically for this episode, what would you say your intention is for our listeners today?
I would like the public to talk to us, go out and meet their local rancher, farmer, the guys on the tractors. I promise they're not booger bears like they act. They're not that bad. We're all pretty friendly as long as someone asks us how we do things. If someone comes at us and says, you're doing it wrong, or you're doing this, then we immediately shut down. So my intention is to let the public know it's okay to ask us. Google doesn't know everything about what we do, I promise. You can reach the end of the internet and never find exactly what we're doing out here. You might find versions of it, but you have to talk to us.
Exactly. And I think that that's really a big thing about a concept that I'm working on right now as well, where if you want to know about something, you have to ask the people that are actually out there doing the work, not necessarily the articles that are written. Like, it's probably a good starting point so that you maybe have some questions to ask, but it's really about getting in there and asking the actual experts themselves, not necessarily, I don't know, the first article that you see.
Yes, and that's one of my taglines when I make my educational posts is ask those of us that have our hands in the dirt, not an apartment lease, because It's two different things.
Exactly.
And same thing on legislation. Why would you trust someone that's in a 1 to 6 month apartment lease about ag legislation? They don't really, there's no connect for them, and their credibility isn't all that great.
Yeah, exactly. There was a sign that I was passing when I was walking through Amarillo, and I misread it. It was a big billboard, and I think it said, if you want to know about the feed, ask the cows. I think that's something about what the thing said. But I read it from far away as, if you want to know about the field, ask the cows. And
Both. It would work as both.
exactly. But the way that I kind of thought about it when I thought it said field, which I still kind of run with, is like, if you want to know about the landscape of something, if you really want to really know the intricacies, the details, where are the holes? Where are the good areas? Like, what is it actually like? You need to ask the people that are in there 24 hours a day that live, breathe, work, sleep the stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's a hard thing for us to get across to the public is we're, even though we have cows or someone has sheep or someone has a farm and they're doing produce, vegetables, whatever, our bottom or number one goal is to take care of that dirt. If we don't take care of that dirt, there's no grass. If there's no grass, there's no cows, there's no sheep, there's no horses. Nothing can live there. Now, when I was younger, we did have a horse that would live on cactus and rocks, but that's very few and far between. They have to have grass. We're just glorified grass farmers is what we are. And the weather dictates a lot of that. It depends on where you are in the country. There's no cookie cutter, this is how you do it, that will apply in every single state. It's just not. So when I go to Texas cattle groups and I talk to them, completely different conversation. They don't have the water issues that we have in New Mexico, and their cows are growing up are being raised on belly deep grass in some areas. Where here, we're running 80, I think on where we're at right now, it's 1 cow per 88 acres. And that's because of the water. And we're regulated to that. We can't have more than that. We cannot, because we have the forest permits and we have the state leases. And we are regulated on those to how many we can have. That means a scientist or a specialist comes out, looks at the country, looks at the grass, looks at the dirt, looks at the water situation, and tells us how many we can run in this area. Texas doesn't have that. Now, your extension agents in Texas, they'll tell you, okay, they'll come out and they'll say, well, looking at your grass and how it's been grazed and in the past, this is probably what you can run here. That's a suggestion. Here, if we go over those numbers, we could possibly lose our lease or our permits. But in Texas, because it's all private, you can't tell somebody they can't overgraze. I mean, you can drive by it and see it and like, oh man, they really need to get them cows off of there. There's nothing but dirt, but nothing can be done about it. But here, we are regulated to rotate. So my grandfather was Sid Goodlow in New Mexico, is one of the world's top soil conservationists, environmental guru guys when it pertains to range management and livestock. So he was an expert in the area. He followed Alan Savory and Aldo, oh gosh, I can't even say his name, Aldo Leopold on their practices on grazing. He didn't follow it to the letter. That's the thing that some new producers, well, I need to follow it to the letter. No, you don't have to. You need to learn what your area will sustain, what you can personally manage, and stick to that. Like I said, there's no cookie cutter way to do this. You follow the guidelines, you follow the regulations, and you stay within those, and you'll be fine.
Exactly. Yeah. And it sounds like after time, you figure out what it really is. And again, it sounds like there's a lot of work in tandem that you have to do with these state agencies or these researchers to figure things out, because at the end of the day, like their intention, it sounds like, is sustainability.
Yes.
It sounds like there's also that aspect of you guys also know exactly what's going on out there.
Yes. Yes. And sustainability and regenerative, those are new buzzwords that are getting floated around, but they're just new words for old practices. That doesn't mean we weren't doing it. It just means somebody came up with a new word for it. And so when you're talking to these fourth and fifth generation people, they must have been using those practices. Common sense will tell you they were, or else farming and ranching would be a nomadic lifestyle. We'd chew up a piece of ground and have to move on to the next one. And it's not like that. If we've been on the same chunk of dirt for 100 years, that means we're doing the regenerative and sustainable.
Yeah, then you're doing something correct.
Yes. And we hear that a lot. Well, y'all are tearing it up. I've got pictures and videos from some, what are those groups called? They come out with the razors and the side-by-sides, and they go on these trips through the mountains, and man, they tear stuff up. Go off-road, make new roads, and they think it's no big deal, but because they say it's public land. But in states where there is public land and a rancher has a permit or a lease, that means that grass that's getting driven all over and wiped out, that's our grass. It belongs to us. Someone has to fix that. And what the public doesn't understand is, yes, the public owns that. What the public actually owns is just the access to. That means they can go to it. Doesn't mean they can go driving off all over the grass or cutting trees. The trees actually belong to Forest Service. And the water and the grazing belong to the rancher that owns that lease or permit. And so the roads, that's basically what the public has access to. It's just the established roads. So the rest is up to us to take care of. It's not some government agency out here fixing fences, fixing water lines and water drinkers for the wildlife. That's us. There's no agent coming out here, or they don't have some maintenance crew that comes out and fixes all that. That's us. So we pay for these leases and permits, plus we pay to maintain those properties. And I just took a picture this morning. I know you saw it when you came in. The BLM was right in front of us, and then there's us right there at a cattle guard. And just in the last week, you can tell the difference between the BLM managed and our managed. And our managed is green and looks like a park. And right across the fence, it's all grown up, dead grass, dead weeds, dead trees. It looks crappy. I'm not gonna lie. It looks kind of crappy. Looks trashy, but whatever. They don't have anybody that takes care of that stuff.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That I feel like a lot of people there, they think BLM land, they think, free space to hang out or to do whatever on or tear it up. But it's managed by someone still. And I think that they would typically think that it would be managed by the federal government or the state government. And that's what I thought was kind of interesting as well, that it's the individual ranchers and I guess you guys act as the land stewards in that situation, not so much.
That's the exact title. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Welcome to the mountaintop. Are you an entrepreneur or nonprofit leader ready to make a bigger impact in the world, but aren't quite sure how to do it or even where to start? Then join the Never Peak community on School, where bold movers, shakers, and magic makers come together to achieve their dreams and support others on the way to theirs. Our goal is to help leaders change the world by first focusing on themselves, by fostering a community rooted in support and learning. My goal is to help you be more effective in your organization, achieve your biggest dreams, and make time for what really matters in your life. In Never Peak, you'll find weekly book clubs, engaging courses, weekly mastermind calls, monthly Q&As with industry experts, and networking opportunities that span the globe. Our courses and discussions cover essential topics like personal finance, work-life balance, goal setting, relationship building, business topics, and so much more. Each course is designed to support you to holistically grow yourself as the person behind the mission. Oh, and one more thing I forgot to mention. At the time of recording this, the community is completely free. That's right, you can get started for $0 down, but that won't last for long. All you need to do is go to school.com, that's SKOOL.com/never-peak, or hit the link in the show notes to claim your spot on the mountain. Again, be sure you get in now, because I cannot wait to see you there and witness the peaks you'll reach in just a few weeks. And then if we can actually take a second to take a step back, you said that you've been doing advocacy for about 24 years now. So you've been living and breathing and speaking to this for so long. What got you into the actual advocacy side of things as opposed to staying in the ranching side necessarily? Like how'd you start getting into the public eye?
I noticed that there was a huge disconnect between, so we'll back up right now. Technically, we are 3 to 4 generations removed from the family farm now. So I remember my grandparents, both sets, and my great-grandparents picked cotton in the South. They picked cotton, and they had horses and they had cows, all of them. So I have those stories to remember. But if you think about it, people in inner cities or really large urban areas, let's say Detroit, kids my age, even at 50 something, they don't have those core memories or stories from their grandparents about growing up that way, because they didn't. They grew up in cities. Now, could you put them out here and them get by? No, but we could make it there. We would be miserable, but we could make it. We could manage. So being that far removed from those stories and that knowledge base about where your food comes from, that is a huge disconnect. And I still see it. I've started posting when I find comments where people are completely just bashing farmers and ranchers. I'll post them. I screenshot them and I post them, and I'm like, this is what we're dealing with. This isn't just ignorance. And let's back up. Ignorance means uninformed or uneducated on a certain subject. It doesn't mean stupid. That's a whole nother word. But they don't have that information to draw on. They don't even have those memories. Their family didn't do anything like that. So they don't have any concept of how food is made, where it comes from, who makes it. And even so far as, and I know everybody jokes about it, but there's a large portion of the population that thinks that chocolate milk comes from a brown cow.
How the misinformation travels so fast.
Yes. And those are the kind of things that get spread like wildfire across the internet. Or shearing sheep, you have to kill them to shear them. It's a haircut. And trying to get the general public to understand it's just a haircut, just like you take your dog into the groomer.
Yeah, the groomer.
It's the same exact thing. The only difference is we can sell the wool, whereas you can't really sell dog hair. I mean, I guess you could.
There's a buyer for everything for some weird reason, probably.
I'm sure but
no, I hear what you're saying is that there are these things that, and I mean, of course, I was in the ag industry. I'm FFA alumni, all that kind of stuff. So it's like, you see those videos and it's like, well, yeah, if you take it from that angle and you put in extra distress sounds of the animals from other, you know what I mean? It's like, it's so easy to make these clickbaity, negative videos.
Very staged.
They're staged, exactly.
Yes. And that's the other thing. We are constantly on guard. We have biosecurity measures at most farms and ranches where we don't like cross-contamination. Whether it's bull gets on us from the neighbors, we have to go and immediately have them trick tested. For people that don't know what trick is, that's basically an STD for bulls, and it will spread like crazy. So if someone's bull gets on us, we got to grab that sucker by any means necessary as quickly as possible before he can contaminate our herd, get him hauled to the vet, get him tested. And then, but we've already talked to the neighbor or whoever it came from. Out here with so much public traffic, it's very hard to maintain your biosecurity and protect your herds. Even our dogs, we don't want people coming through and their dogs are possibly carrying parvo, because then we got to deal with that with our dogs. And with the dogs we have now that you saw, that's not a cheap loss. If we lose one of those, that's a pretty big loss, and we need those dogs. So just trying to protect things from the public, from the public's ignorance, from what they don't know. And I saw an article, a gal wrote about packing houses. And she said the public doesn't know what they don't know. And they have no way of knowing what it is they don't know. Same thing with new producers. They get into this industry and they're like, well, I don't understand why I'm not making any money. Well, honey, you got 5 and you only sell a calf when mama needs her hair done. It's not gonna, that's not management. There's management and there's owning. So when the public sees shows like Yellowstone, they just latch onto that. That must be how it is. No, parts. There are parts. And I do watch Yellowstone so that I can make an educational post the next day, say this is what they got right, this is what they got horribly wrong. So trying to get the public to talk to us instead of relying on Hollywood and anti-ag propaganda. Sometimes it's very frustrating because you want to say, really? You bought that, but you won't, but you call us a liar? It's very hard when it comes to that kind of stuff. And historically, the ag industry has kept their mouth shut too long. And now we're trying to play catch up. And the anti-ag crowd has been at this propaganda game for decades at this point. So now we're trying to go back and say, whoa, that wasn't right, that wasn't right, that wasn't right. Here's the real truth. So when we're spouting the real truth right now, nobody believes us. Because the other side has done such a great job of just, what's the word? It's bombing of a certain information bombing, but it's incorrect information. It's not correct. It has an agenda, and the agenda is to get rid of agriculture.
And if I can jump in there with you, with playing catch up with the statement of like keeping your guys' mouth closed for too long.
Yeah.
Like why do you think that is? Because I'm sure that there's been negative things said about farming and ag for years and years and years and years. But like, yes. Why is there such a now sudden because it sounds like you got into advocacy as like you're working against the misinformation.
Yes.
So I guess like why didn't all of it happen sooner, or like what led to that? Like was it just like an ignore until they stopped talking, or what?
I think it's just like that question when that we know we're not supposed to ask. When someone says, well, how many cows you got? Well, what's in your bank account? That's the equivalent. We're really private about what we have and what we're not necessarily what we're doing, but that's like asking somebody what's in their bank account or how much land do you got? We know amongst ourselves that that's a rude question to ask, but at some point we have to start explaining these things. And I'll tell you exactly what changed: the internet. And that's where the anti-ag groups have established unfortunately, they've established a really good base, and they're loud. Even though they're the minority, they're loud, and they are really great at this social media stuff. And I've been trying to push agriculture to get into this social media since 2010 when I had my radio show. And I was telling them, you're letting other people tell your story. Why are you doing that? They're getting it wrong. If you don't like the way you're being portrayed in social media or on TV or wherever, correct them. Show them how it's actually done. Tell them how it's actually done instead of letting someone else tell their story and getting mad because they got it wrong. It's up to us to fix that. And a lot of us, you met Chad, my husband, they don't talk. They don't want to talk. They don't want to be around people. They don't. They'd rather hang out with their cows, and they don't care what people think. And so now, even in politics, they'll say things like, I don't have time to vote. Well, you better start making time. The cows can wait. They can wait long enough for you to get down there to the polling place and vote. So that's been our biggest problem in agriculture is we are not good at embracing change and technology. Unless it's, a combine that's got all the bells and whistles, and then we're like, oh yeah, that's cool. And a lot of technological advances for equipment and vehicles comes from agriculture. So we have to do a better job of speaking up and correcting what's out there that's incorrect. Just like that sheep shearing thing. That's the silliest thing I've ever seen. I can't even wrap my mind around people being mad that a sheep gets a haircut. I just can't. Because that doesn't make any sense to me. But if you explain it to them in a way, compare it to taking their dog to the groomer, then they're like, oh, you don't have to kill them? No. They won't grow more wool to sell if you kill them. So that we need to do a better job of straightening things out like that. I've seen a video floating around where a dairy calf is having to be pulled by chains because he got stuck. The comments were and the posts were, this is what they do. They rip them out and kill them. No, honey.
Yeah.
It's just like a breech baby for a human. You have to straighten it out and you have to pull them or else both die. It's an basic animal husbandry thing. And we have to do that more than people would ever imagine. It just happens and they need help and we have to help them. But those kind of videos get twisted and turned into something that's just not even close to reality. So that's been my goal is to explain to the public. Elsie on the board and milk, I actually got asked by someone that I went to high school with. He said, hey, my son is asking, how come Elsie has a girl name, but she has horns? And I had to explain, horns aren't gender specific in cattle like they are elk or deer or whatever. They're not gender specific. So, but I was glad he asked. At least somebody asked. And then I've had several people I went to high school with ask me, hey, what about this or what about that? What about this organic label and this label? And, then I have to explain all that. And that's like going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, it definitely sounds like there's a few, the main things are just like, traditionally, like you were kind of saying, like farmers and ranchers, like they're more quiet, more reserved because they're so focused. There's so many things going on the farm that they need to deal with. And I feel like it's very easy to get overwhelmed and lost in that sea of, well, I have to do this, and this. I'm only one So it sounds like it's kind of like I'm so focused on what's going on in front of me. And that's the immediate thing I can see. But there's other issues that are popping up adjacent to what's going on.
Yes. And animal health is always going to be our number one priority. So like the last couple of days, we've been working on water lines. Again, if we don't have water, we don't have grass. If we don't have water, we don't have cows at all. So water is way at the top of is right up there at the top of the list. Got to have water. And I know people think that farmers and ranchers are a bunch of illiterate hillbillies out here, but I know a bunch of them that have degrees in all sorts of things. And they decided, that life's not for me. I'm going home. It's quiet. It's peaceful. And so if we were to match a rancher skill set and try to hire them based on their skill set in the corporate sector, corporate couldn't afford them. They're welders, they're plumbers, they're construction, they're vets, veterinarians, they're nutritionists, they're environmentalists, they're conservationists. They run heavy equipment. They work on heavy equipment. They do all of those things. And just wrapped up in this one tired body.
I mean, it sounds like it. So it sounds like there's, and I guess I kind of want to move into, when it comes to this advocacy, it sounds like the individual has a hard time doing it themselves, or, responding to comments or this or that, or being an advocate on their own. So it sounds like these advocacy groups, like the ones that you're involved with or you were involved with, are critical to supporting the mission of American agriculture.
Yes, and I have noticed that some of them will not wade off in the trenches. I will, just because I'm old and I'm spiteful that way. But if I see an awful comment, I'm like, wait a minute. You don't get to say that. You don't get to say that we're murdering animals out here. And that's been, that's actually why I started being so vocal about it, is because we're being accused of being rapists and murderers. And I'm like, are you sure we're talking about cows and horses? Because this murder doesn't apply to livestock. It applies to humans. That's the only thing in the dictionary that it applies to. But the whole thing about, well, you have to kill them to eat them. Well, yeah, honey, have you tried to eat one live? That gets awkward in a hurry. I mean, that doesn't end well for anyone. They don't like to be chewed on alive. I mean, I wouldn't think. I haven't tried it. But I don't know. Not sure where that group gets their information. Trying to bridge that gap when they're already so ingrained in that truth that they've decided that's the truth. That's it. And that's not the group that I try to speak to, because they get I like to compare it to Alice in Wonderland, because you have the movable middle where you can talk to these people and you can educate them and you can get them to understand, oh yeah, that wasn't correct what I was told. This is how it's actually done. And then you have the Mad Hatters, and they are set. You're not going to change their mind. They're bordering on lunacy sometimes and wanting farmers and ranchers to die. And they accuse us of trying to kill them. And my response to that is always, well, dead people don't eat. So
yeah, that's
what business model works where you kill your customers off? Oh, morticians. That's it. That's the one that, yeah.
What is it? The big saying is, if you want to make money in the world, get into weddings and death.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. No, and I always think that's so interesting is that people are very much, like, even just going to college or talking to different people that I've known, it's, the evil farmer, the this or that. And it's like, why, one,
where did it come from?
Where did that come from? And also, why would people purposefully do something to hurt other people in such a large and organized fashion like that, when they're selling a product that needs you to be healthy, happy, and alive? Like, I've never understood that sentiment.
No. And I don't know where that came from. I'm assuming it came from the vegan bunch, but when we're talking about vegans, we have to be very clear, because someone may say, I'm a vegan, but what they actually are is they just don't eat meat for whatever reason. It's not that they're vegan, because if they were a true vegan in 2024 will have to live off grid, under a rock, no power, no phone, no laptop, nothing. And they'll be gatherers. They'll be eating fruits and nuts and berries off of what they can pick up. That's a true vegan in 2024, because every single product they put their hand on in any given day has animal byproducts. Whether they know it or not, it's in there. So that's a lack of education on their part. And they don't want to acknowledge that. I mean, even the sidewalks, the asphalt they drive on, the components in their cell phones or their laptops, all the way down to the marshmallows they want to put in their hot chocolate. It's all
I was gonna say about the marshmallows. Like even marshmallows have like it's crazy how. I mean, that was something that we learned in our very first ag class that I took in high school was there's animal products in pretty much every single thing that you use. Yeah.
Yes, even medical products. There's a beef byproduct that's used to treat preemie babies. I have 3 preemie babies. I appreciate that. I appreciate that we have that. Also with Audrey being burned, she has those skin grafts, and this time they were done with beef skin cells. So there are medical things that the world can't do without. And I know this new push to rewild everything. It's not okay. They want to talk about sustainable and regenerative. That's not sustainable. It's not. I mean, we even have to manage deer. That's why we have hunting seasons. And sometimes they'll have an open season. It's to control the disease and the deformities that come from inbreeding in certain groups of animals. But, all the way down to the squeeze chutes that we use to work our cows in, the other side has been calling those rape racks. I'm like, what in the world are y'all talking about? And it gets so silly that you want to laugh, but then there are people that they're held on, they've grabbed a hold of that, and that is it. That's their truth, and you're not going to move them off of that. I don't know where those groups come from. I don't know what schools they went to. Obviously, there wasn't agriculture, FFA or 4-H. Maybe it was available, and they just didn't want to do it. I don't know. I try. I'm so far in this that I don't know how the other side gets educated or where they get their information. So, because I'm in here in it and my hands are in it and my family's in it. And so it was just always common knowledge to us how these things are done. So I don't know. I don't know how that happens. I really don't. Because at some point, an adult has cognitive reasoning skills and they can kind of common sense their way through some of these topics. Because some of them you would think, that doesn't sound right. Maybe I should ask. That's not happening. They're not asking. And then they're not even saying, that doesn't sound right.
It's like people kind of make up their own minds. And then, I mean, that's another thing is that echo chambers on the internet are such a, terrible thing because, people just get into this room. And if you get into a room or a chat room, right, with 20 other people that agree with you, and that's all you share, and that's all you see all day, you're not going to question it. You're not going to ask questions. You're just going to take that as truth. Right. But it's when you get out of those chambers and, again, ask the people that are in the field what's actually going on, I think that is like the most valuable part of that. Hey, everyone, just a quick message. You know that my mission with this podcast is to share stories of influence and impact so that we can help more people help more people. But to do that, I need your support. Please rate, review, and share this podcast. If I could ask for just one favor, it's to just leave a review. It takes about 10 seconds and a few clicks, but it means the world to me and could inspire someone else to make a difference. Thank you so much. Now back to the show. To scooch back kind of like to the advocacy groups and your clothing brand, with the advocacy groups, what would you say is like the biggest, I guess, the good, the biggest good that these groups do when you guys kind of come together? Because it sounds like there's sometimes, they might be, or some people might be more reserved even in those groups, not as so far into the trenches. Like, what is the benefit of bringing all those different personality types together for that common?
Dreading this question.
I know, but
I was dreading it. Best thing I can say for people is join a group. If you don't like it, find another one. you're not bound to one group or another. If you don't feel like there's a good fit there for you and your operation, get another one. Keep joining until you find one where you feel like you fit in. And I can tell you, I don't fit in a lot because I'm pretty vocal and I want action. I do. I don't want this sitting around and drinking coffee, having pie and gossiping about everybody's kids. I want to go to an organization where we're going to do things and we're going to affect legislation. And I'm a boat rocker. So I want that boat rocked. I don't want a leisurely cruise. I want stuff done. So I have a little bit of trouble with groups. So right now I'm kind of on a break from groups because I don't know which ones are really proactive and actually pushing for things the way they could be. I'm not saying they're not doing things. There are some that are, and I know they can get in a rut. They've been doing things a certain way for so long, and so membership in these groups, the same as in the industry as a whole, is dropping. And that's because we're aging out and we're dying. We don't last forever. You can only beat your body up like this for so long. And farmers and ranchers don't retire. Most people don't know that we don't retire. There's no retirement. There's no 401k. There's no health insurance. None of that. We don't get any of that. So we work until we absolutely die, until we drop. And people say, well, why do you do that? Because you won't. Because nobody else will. And so in 2020, we were 1.87% of the population, and the population in the U.S. is 333 million plus. In 2024, we are 0.67% of the population. We've lost 2/3 in the last 4 years. And when people say, well, why do you bring politics in it? I said, I didn't bring politics in it. Your food is 100% tied up in politics, whether you like it or not. It just is, and it always has been. And I know this is a pretty harsh thing to say, but control the food, control the people. That's something people need to really wrap their head around. Because for us to be less than 1% of the population, that's less than 5 million. And we're feeding everybody, and we're freaking tired. We're tired. Most of us live below poverty level. Yes, we have land and we have equipment and we have cows, but all that stuff has to be there to support that livestock, to support that food. And so my biggest push has been, you see cows, I see hamburgers and steaks. You see a rich rancher, I see some broke guy just trying to get by so that you have food on your table. And I don't think the public is going to snap to how dire this situation is at this point until it turns into a toilet paper situation where what you need to survive is gone. And it's scarce and it's hard to come by. And at this rate, that's coming. And I saw what people did over toilet paper. So imagine what it's going to be like when there's no food. It's going to get pretty bad.
Yeah. No, I mean, it definitely is it's a very serious thing, right? Like this isn't just, this is like the bare bone necessity basics of sustaining life and everything. And to kind of touch on the group thing, I also don't want to make it sound like every group is great and everything's magical and wonderful, right? Like there are issues even in the groups that are advocates and that was something I think that I want to say I was trying to get across, but I think your reaction, I think people can also tell, like I noticed that I mean, I've been in groups where I thought it was one thing and it ended up being another. And then I get frustrated by the inaction or the, I guess, lack of action in areas that I can see are a bigger problem, or maybe I don't understand what's going on, you know? So I think that what you said right there is at the end of the day, it's about getting involved. And if you see a problem, work to be the solution, not just kind of sit on the back burner and wait for somebody else to. Because it sounds like, what is it, the bystander effect is something that's been kind of prevalent as, oh, well, I don't have time, somebody else will take care of it, or, you know, somebody else will help or say something, I don't have to, but then nothing happens.
That is agriculture in a nutshell right there when it comes to legislation and advocacy. It's always, well, so-and-so will do it. And a lot of these groups, what happens is, I'm not going to name which one I know about, but there were 600 members any given year. 10 to 15 were doing all the promotions, we're doing all the posting, we're doing all the activities and events. And then you have a hierarchy. You know, you have officers, you have local officers, and then you have state officers. And you just, as an officer, you get run ragged. You cannot please everybody. And then sometimes in some groups, you feel like you're dragging a cruise ship behind you, and it's just you, and it's not moving. It's dead in the water. And you try and you try and you try and pull them along, and you just can't. They've done things a certain way for so long, they're not going to change until there is a major change in membership. And that is coming because the members are getting older, just like the rest of us. They're aging out, and that's kind of a double situation there. It's a double-edged sword. You want to recruit new members. You want the younger crowd to come in, and you try, but you have the old guard that doesn't want to change a thing. They don't want to hear anything that the new recruits have to say, even if they're right. But then on the other side of that sword, you have the new people that want to jump in, and they're so enthusiastic, and they want to do this and that and this and that and this and that. And they're wrong. Not wrong, but they don't have all the information that they need in order to accomplish what they want to accomplish. So that goes to first generation farmers and ranchers. They're so enthusiastic, and they want to get in, and they want to do it, and they don't understand what happens when it goes south and they don't make it. And their first inclination is to blame the generational families for that. They want to say that we ran them out. No, you didn't grow. You didn't try to grow. You were happy with your little 5 acres and your five cows, and you thought you were going to get rich. That's a lack of education on their part. It used to be like before World War II, if you had 20 cows, you were in high cotton. You were doing pretty well. 20 cows will no longer pay for your funeral. It just doesn't. And so even having 100, it only supports one generation of a ranch family on that farm or ranch at a time. And I know that the public says, oh my God, you have 100 cows, you're rolling. Oh, if you saw our feed bill, that's scary to know how little we get. One paycheck a year, one, if things are managed correctly. You know, that, like I said, there are some operations where they're pulling cows in because they need tires on the truck. So they'll sell 3 or 4 calves, buy tires or whatever, go get mama's hair fixed. I don't know. But 100 does not provide what the gross profit would be less than a administrative assistant in town would make. So we're trying to support an entire family and feed all those on secretary pay. It's very hard. It's not as glamorous as people would like to think it is. And that's the thing that I think in groups, they need to be a little bit better about accepting new people, new recruits, and then the recruits. What they really need to do is simmer down on some of that. You're doing it wrong. you're old, you're doing it wrong, because they're bad about that. They need to go in and with their ears open and their mouth shut and learn. Stick with it for a year, see what you pick up. You don't have to just jump right in and change everything in 1 year. If you're in your early 20s, get in a group. If you like that group, hang out for a while. Move in work on the different committees. See, that's what I thought. I think that when someone joins a cattle association or some kind of advocacy group, get on a committee. And I think that should be mandatory. As soon as you pay your membership, you can choose a committee to be on, or you get put in a committee. And I think that every member should serve on a committee at least 1 year so that they learn how the organization works, what their goals are, that sort of thing. And it also teaches them the industry. So just like beef, owning cattle and managing cattle are two different things. And having 5 it's not the same business as someone with 100. It's not even the same customers. And so when we hear that, what do they say? Oh, well, the larger the larger businesses are running us out. No, we're still doing business the way we were. Nothing changed. You moved in. That's the only difference. And you could be 100, or you could be 200. You could be 500 by the time you're our age. But you have to learn from somebody. There's a huge learning curve in agriculture, especially if you didn't grow up in it. And I know everybody in the world today, they want to move out. They want to move out of the cities and go homestead. I'm sure people have watched that homestead rescue show. It's not exactly as simple as just going off grid in an RV or having a cabin and some chickens. It's a little harder than that.
And if I can jump in there, it sounds like a lot of it really just boils down to listening intentionally.
Yes.
Join the groups, listen, learn, and at the same time, there's that aspect of don't try to jump in and change everything right away, but also don't get so set in your ways that you're blind to what's actually going on in the world.
Yes. Yes.
And it really just sounds like it boils down to find a group, see if you jive with it. If you don't, find another one. But at the end of the day, no matter where you go, you're the common denominator. You need to also be that present, curious, advocating, passionate self that is willing to do the work. And I feel like you and I could sit down for a whole other hour-long episode and talk about what is like the Pareto principle. 20% of the people in the organization do the work. The other 80% kind of just have opinions.
I'm going to go 5 and 95.
Let's go 5.
On that one. Yeah. It's a little bit different.
The joke I've always had was it's always the people that do the least that say the most. And it's like, okay, well, that's a good opinion. That's like, I'm glad to know that there's something going on during that meeting. Yes. Why aren't you doing anything about it? But I feel like we could go a whole other hour on this, but it really just boils down to, if you're curious, if you have questions, ask them. Find the actual people that are in the field doing the work and ask. And if you're in the field, be askable. Like, be willing to answer the questions. Be willing to do this thing. I think it's very easy for us to find ways to, like, islandate ourselves. Like, I'm going to stay in my kind of like the echo chambers, right? Yes. Like that's human nature. We like to be with groups that we find that we jive with. Yeah. But I know that. Oh, what were we going to say?
Go ahead. And we do kind of self-isolate. Just because when we do go to town and we see what's going on in towns and big cities, we're like, what the heck are y'all doing? Are y'all crazy? This is nuts. It just gets we have a hard time understanding that lifestyle, but I'm sure they have the same hard time understanding ours. They do. They have no clue. So, and we feel the same way about them. We don't understand how they function on a daily basis with the things that go on in the world, and we just stay away from it. And that's our biggest problem, is we tend to stay out of it, and stay away from things. But we have to start getting involved and showing up. That's another one of my biggies. Just show up.
Just show up.
You know? Yeah. If somebody's got an anti-ag rally, it's going to be miserable if you go. It is. You're going to be attacked. You're going to be called all kinds of names. But if we don't show up, that's acceptance. Silence is acceptance. And we've done that for way too long. Way too long.
Well, Charity, if people want to follow you on social media or learn more about you, where are you showing up in terms of your advocacy, or where people can learn more about you or the industry as a whole?
I'm online. I am on Facebook under my personal page, Charity Underwood Saulsberry, or I did start my clothing brand and home goods brand because everything out there had dairy cows. And I love my dairy ladies. I do. I support the dairy industry too, even though I'm in beef. I support the dairy industry. I support poultry. I support pork, all of it. So I think on Instagram, I'm under USPER Clothing. And then on Facebook, it's either my personal page or my store page, the letter U, Spur. And so I try to, educate on there. Like I said, I watch Yellowstone just so I can debunk a lot of it. And anytime I see something, I post it, and I'm like, okay, see, here's where this went right, and here's where it went way off the rails. And it's mostly common sense. That if you break it down real simple, just like the sheep getting a haircut, if you break it down that simple for people, then they're like, oh, well, nobody told me that. Okay, well, we're telling you now. It's just a haircut. So
it's just a haircut.
Yeah, it's just a haircut. I think that's going to be my new bumper sticker. I'm going to have a sheep on it and say, it's just a haircut. That's going to be it. That'll be my next shirt.
Perfect. Well, when you have that linked up, let me know and I'll post it on the page. But all of your pages, everything will be down in the show notes below. Charity, I appreciate you taking the time to chitter chat for a little bit and share some of your knowledge. And
yeah, I'll bend anybody's ear. I don't care.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you.
And I'll have you on when I get mine going. I'll get my podcast going.
We'd love to see it. That was a fantastic conversation with Charity. We covered so much ground today, from the importance of education for new farmers to the harsh realities of managing a modern ranch. We also touched on the misconceptions about rural life and the critical role of involvement of advocacy groups. Remember, if you're curious about the fields, ask the cows. Reach out to those that are boots on the ground doing the work, not just social media echo chambers or your Aunt Phyllis who never stepped ground on a farm in her life. Because only then, when you reach out to those that know what's truly going on, will you learn the reality of the situation. And as Charity said, sometimes it's just as simple as showing up. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's episode. If you found it valuable, please share it with a friend or two or three. Every time you share the podcast, you can help us fulfill our mission of helping more people help more people. As always, have fun, stay safe, and be yourself. I'll catch you all in the next one.